So while there is still some signings and rumors that is happening around the MLS world, and one rumor that I actually forgot to mention yesterday in my review of the MLS secondary transfer window trade deadline day is that Messi is leaving Barcelona. Now, I know that really excited a lot of people and certainly a lot of MLS club was trying to do their classic announce Messi kind of meme, and people were thinking maybe this is the moment for Messi to come to MLS. No, unfortunately that doesn't seem like it's going to be the case, and that what I last heard is that he potentially is going to be going to PSG. But yeah, Messi unfortunately is not going to come to MLS, at least not at this time at the moment. But one thing that is coming soon is another match week of the MLS season, as we are now into another match week of the weekend's action, where once again we're going to have 13 games that's going to be happening in terms of the weekend's action. But what's great about this weekend is that it's pretty balanced with the way that there's actually 7 games that's going to be happening on Saturday and 6 games that's going to be happening on Sunday. And what's great about that is that I don't have to worry about keeping an eye on so many games at a short amount of period. Although I know for the Saturday action, there is going to be a time where I have to try my best to keep an eye on 6 games that's going to be happening around the same time. But at least it's not as bad as what happened on Wednesday, where there was 12 games that was taking place, and there was like 8 games at one point that was on the same time, and it was virtually impossible to try to keep an eye on all of them. And also, in this video, we'll talk about the Saturday game action, and tomorrow I will do the preview in terms of looking at the last 6 games that's happening on Sunday. But without further ado, let us actually begin. We've talked about the first game of match week number 17 in terms of the weekend's action, and it's none other than FC Cincinnati versus Orlando City, as this game will start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. Now, I'm not quite sure if this is actually correct, but all the games from this weekend is not on national television again. Now, I did say last Wednesday, or not last Wednesday, but this Wednesday, where all the games were not on national television, and I thought, well, that's pretty normal because usually midweek games are not televised on national television. But this weekend's action, it's kind of the same thing, and is what is really surprised, because this week I don't see maybe ESPN or Fox have anything big that maybe is a reason why they don't televise an MLS game. So yeah, it's kind of weird that of course is going to be the case. And also this weekend, pretty much most of the game is going to be nightcap game, and the Saturday action, we're going to have no matinee game that's going to be happening this week. So the first game, as I mentioned, will start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. Cincinnati, of course, they are now winless in 7 games and have not scored in 300 minutes. But if you're an optimistic Cincinnati fan, you would also say that they have not conceded a goal in over 200 minutes, as they have now had back-to-back clean sheet. Now for Orlando, they drew 1-1 to Miami at home in their last match in the Florida Derby. And in terms of the injury report, I haven't done this in a while, in a preview where I talked about injury report. For Cincinnati, you got Calvin Harris, Michael Van der Werf, and Zico Bailey are out for Cincinnati in this game. While for Orlando City, you got Sebastian Mendes out for this team. And questionable coming into this game is Junior Urso, Alexandre Pato, and Pedro Gallese. Although, notice how they didn't put Antonio Carlos in the injury report, even though in the last game I talked about how he definitely suffered a very scary moment with a head-to-head collision that of course scored the only goal for Orlando City in that Florida Derby against Inter Miami. And I'm assuming when I look at the injury report, which I of course use the injury report from the league website, I think they have not updated in terms of all the new injury that just happened this past week. So most of these injuries are probably ones that was still kind of from last week, and that I think whoever decided to create the injury report or update the injury report probably forgot that there was a match week that was going to happen, because again, I think Antonio Carlos might not be available in this game, because judging by the fact that he definitely looked like he suffered a bit of a concussion in the last game, I don't think Orlando City is going to rush him to get him back into this team. But that being said, that is definitely going to be a big loss for Orlando City, because he's been by far probably the best player in that back line for Orlando City, and let's see if FC Cincinnati can maybe take advantage of that. But that being said, they're kind of going back to that FC Cincinnati that we know last year, where there was a time where FC Cincinnati just struggled to score goals at home, and they had a bunch of 0-0 draw that has happened. Yeah, it seems like it's happening again, and I'm not quite sure if you're a Cincinnati fan, you're happy about that, because yes, you of course are able to get clean sheet and not able to leak goals like they did earlier this season, but at the same time, they're once again struggling to score goals. In this season, they were supposed to make signings that would hope to solve that issue, which, yeah, it doesn't seem like that has been solved, at least in these last couple of games, where once again the goals have dried out for FC Cincinnati. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Columbus versus Atlanta United. So this game will also start at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:38 p.m. local time. The Crew is currently 6-6-5, while Atlanta is 2-9-6. Columbus, of course, suffered that surprising 4-2 loss to DC United at home, while for Atlanta, their league longest winless run is now at 12 games because they drew 2-2 against Montreal, which was a draw that I think they will probably be happy with, considering the fact that they were down 2-0 at one point in that game against Montreal. But in terms of the injury report, and I kind of first want to apologize to Columbus fans by saying that they were kind of getting themselves back to healthy, which in theory it seems like it, because they are getting a couple of guys back from the IR, but in reality they still are missing a couple of key pieces. A couple of these players that is out is Aiden Morris, who's done for the season because of torn ACL. And then you got Artur, Milton Valenzuela, and Perry Kitchen still out for this team. And then questionable for Columbus is Vito Wormgård and Josh Williams coming into this one. For Atlanta, Emerson Hyman is out for this game. He's done for the season because of torn ACL. And then you got Franco Ibarra and Mo Adams also out for this game. Questionable coming into this game is Jake Marini and Brooks Lennon. But obviously coming into this game, I think this is a big game for both of these teams, and especially both of these teams coming into this season. They definitely had some high expectation, and you could maybe even argue that both of these teams were supposed to be competing for the Eastern Conference crown. I mean, at least with Columbus, we thought that they were supposed to be the best team in the league, and look how things have gone. And, of course, a lot of that has to do with injury just kind of completely depleted their team, but also maybe we kind of overjudged by the fact that maybe they're not as deep as what we thought it was. I mean, the whole offseason we've been talking about how Columbus is a very deep team, and even if they do go through a bit of an injury crisis like they are going through, they're still going to be fine. That doesn't seem like it is the case with them struggling in this season, and especially in these past couple of games where their defense just been non-existent in the last two games, with them giving up eight goals in the last two games. While for Atlanta United, again, this has just been a huge disappointing season, and a season where they were supposed to kind of rebuild the team and also hire a head coach that was supposed to guide them back to the promised land. Well, that head coach has now been fired, and it seems like there's been rumor that they're going to bring in another big player, which I heard that they have signed Luis Aroja from Leo, and they decided to sign him on a DP contract, which I'm kind of surprised because I thought Atlanta did not have a DP spot left in their team. Unless, again, I think maybe they brought down Marcelo Marino contract and that they decided to now slot in or when they bought down his contract, they can have like a new DP slot open. But either way, both of these teams definitely wants to get wins in this game so that they can salvage what's just been so far a disappointing season for both of this team. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Minnesota versus the Houston Dynamo. So the Loons are playing for the first time since that robbery happened at Rio Tinto Stadium, as they, of course, despite the fact that they did have that robbery, they're now unbeaten in the last 4 games and are unbeaten pretty much, I think, 10 out of the last 11 games that they have ever since, or no, not 10 out of 11, it's actually 11 out of the last 12 games ever since they started the season 0-4. And they're about to face a Dynamo team that, well, their winless run is now at 10 games after they lost 3-2 against Austin FC in the first ever Copa Tejas matchup, and the record is 3-9-5. This game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 7:08 p.m. local time. Injury report for both of these teams. For Minnesota, Only player that is out for this game is Franco Fragapane. Questionable are Michael Boxall and Chase Gaspard. For the Dynamo, Lico Limon is out for this game, and the only player that's questionable for the Dynamo is Ethan Barlow. And, for Minnesota, great chance for them to get back to winning ways. And I really want this team to really come out with a little bit fire under their belly and just kind of play angry in this game. Because, I talked about how they got robbed in that game against Vancouver, and that, hopefully these players kind of maybe take that personally and hope to take it on in this one, because if that's going to be the case, then yeah, I expect this should be a win for the Loons, and that, again, this should be a win for the Loons. This should be one of the most winnable game for them, especially playing at home against a relatively weak opponent that is the Dynamo, that is going for a free fall right now, and I think anything but 3 points in this game will definitely be very disappointed if you're the Loons coming into this one. But now, moving on into the next match, is going to be Toronto versus NYCFC. So this game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 8:08 p.m. local time. TFC, of course, they lost 3-0 to the Union away, and definitely looked like they took a huge step back and almost are back into the Chris Armas era, where they were pretty much losing every single week, and their record is now 3-5-9. While for NYCFC, they did kind of cool off a little bit against the Fire, no pun intended, by the way, as they drew 0-0 to them on the road, and their record is 8-3-5. Injury report for both of these teams. For Toronto, Iowa Kanoa, of course, is done for the season because of that unfortunate torn ACL that he suffered with Canada in the Gold Cup. And then Tsubasa Endo also not available for this game. Questionable coming into this game is Aro Jr., Dom Dwyer, and Alejandro Pozuelo, although I heard that they're probably not going to have Pozuelo back in this game just yet, as he's still recovering from a bit of a knock. I believe he's suffering an ankle injury right now, or actually a back injury, but it seems like he probably will not be available coming into this game. Now for NYCFC, you got Hebert still recovering from that torn ACL that he suffered last season, and then Talas Magno not available for NYCFC in this game. But anytime when this game, of course, happened, I remember this was a matchup a couple of years ago. This was supposed to be a heavyweight matchup. I mean, both of these teams were two of the best teams in the Eastern Conference, and this was also a matchup that a lot of people were looking forward to. But now, fast forward a couple of years later, not so much. But that being said, I still think it's a very important matchup, and I am wearing my NYCFC jersey, and anytime when I wear a jersey of a team in the preview, usually it is a matchup that you should be able to keep an eye on, and I think this, of course, is going to be the one, because for Toronto, they're desperate to try to bounce back after what happened in the last game, where again they just looked like they were back in that timeline with Chris Armas, where they was just looking terrible throughout that timeline, and it's not going to be easy, because they're going to be facing against an NYCFC team that this team has been red hot in these last couple of games, and are looking to try to get all 3 points on the road against Toronto FC. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the last 3 games that's going to be happening on the Saturday night action of MLS Matchweek number 17. So moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other than the second ever Copa Tejas match between FC Dallas versus Austin FC. And technically, when I mean the second ever Copa Tejas matchup, it doesn't mean FC Dallas and Austin FC is facing for the second time. This is just the second time of this Copa Tejas matchup, where if FC Dallas play Austin, or FC Dallas play Houston, or Austin play against Houston, it is always going to be called the Copa Tejas. But yeah, in the second ever Copa Tejas in MLS, we see FC Dallas take on Austin FC. And by the way, I was thinking about wearing my Verde for this preview to pretty much just honor the fact that this is probably one of the most watched games for this weekend's action. But I decide not to do so, because I'm pretty sure some people still think that when I wear a jersey of a team in this preview, I probably just jinx that team. Even though that is actually not true, because in the last preview I wear Inter Miami. They did not lose their game against Orlando City. In fact, they got a very good point against Orlando City. And then in the other preview, where I wear a Quakes jersey when they play against the Seattle Sounders, guess what happened? The Quakes won that game against the Seattle Sounders. So all that kind of of conspiracy theory, the fact that I wear a jersey of a team during a preview and I just absolutely jinxed them, probably is not true all the time. But if you actually believe that, then, you know, since I wear NYCFC this week, I apologize to NYCFC fans if I just jinx your team against TFC coming into this week. But going back to this matchup in the second ever Copa House in MLS, this will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time is 7:38 p.m. local time. Dallas, of course, drew 1-1 to the Seattle Sounders in their last game, while Austin, they won their first ever Copa House matchup against the Houston Dynamo and were able to win 3-2 in that game. Injury reports for both of these teams. For Dallas, 2 players are out for this game, Benny Redsett and Justin Shea out for Dallas in this one. While for Austin, Aaron Schoenfield, Ulysses Segura, Ben Sweat, and Danny Houston are out for this game. But questionable coming into this game is Mackenzie Glantz and Daniel Pereira, which I don't think Daniel Pereira is actually questionable coming into this one, because I swear he actually played in the last game against Austin FC. And again, this is where I go back to what I said earlier, where the injury report, whoever is in charge of it, probably forgot that there's a midweek action this week, because, you know, again, a lot of these injury reports seems like it's still stuck in that timeline of last week where they never updated in terms of new injury that happened during the midweek action. But either way, you know, in the second ever Copa House matchup, you know, I would say that coming into this game, no doubt Austin is going to be the favorites, and they're going to have the confidence knowing the fact that they got a huge victory in their first ever Copa House matchup against Houston. But that being said, Dallas is playing at home, and if there's one thing I know about Dallas this season, is especially the fact that when they do play against big opponent, they were able to get at least a draw and able to get wins. Now, that being said, Austin this season isn't really that big opponent, and in fact, this is kind of a team that Dallas does struggle so far this season, where when they do face against a team that's around them in the table, they tend to not able to pick up wins. But I'm just going to say this to Dallas, that, you know, if they can pretend that this is actually a big matchup and just pretend that Austin FC is actually near the top of the table, maybe they can actually get all 3 points. Because again, it is very strange to see this team being one of the worst teams in the league, and yet when they do face against teams that is near the top of the table, they're able to get points and even at times able to get wins both home and on the road. I mean, I swear, I've never seen that has happened ever in MLS, and it's just kind of weird that of course is the case. And let's see whether or not if this is going to be continued when they do play against Austin FC in this game, where also, by the way, there is expected to be about 700 or maybe even larger than that of a crowd to attend this game, because the 700 I think they announced was the away section, and that's going to be probably one of the biggest away section that we have seen in MLS in recent memory. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be more Austin FC fans that's going to be sitting around the stadium, and don't be surprised, you're going to see a lot of Verde at Toyota Stadium when this game is taking place. Now, moving on into the next match is going to be Colorado versus Sporting KC. So these two teams, of course, met not long ago. In fact, I think it was last month that both of these teams, of course, met each other. And this was also kind of a matchup that I was very looking forward to in the last time that both of these teams met each other, because both of these teams were red hot coming into this. And coming into this game, it's pretty much the same thing. You know, Colorado, they have a record of 8-3-4 and currently in 4th place in the Western Conference and are fresh off of a 1-0 win against Austin FC away. Well, for Sporting KC, they're now leading the Western Conference table, and even though they're technically tied with Seattle in terms of the top spot of the Western Conference, they actually have a game in hand over Seattle. And if this was still last year and we go with the points per game total to finish the season, SKC would have actually finished the season at the top of the Western Conference, just like what they did last year, and then have a record of 10-3-4. Now, this game will start at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time will be 7:08 p.m. local time. Now, in terms of injury report, and one of the good things that I am doing injury report is that I'm starting to find out some injuries that some of these teams has, and maybe kind of change my way to how I look at this team. And this could be an example for Colorado where I talk about what has happened to Jonas Namely and why exactly he hasn't been performing this season. Well, the answer is because he hasn't even been playing this season. He's actually been out throughout this season. I think it was a knee injury that he's been suffering so far this season, but he's still out with this team. Well, for Sporting KC, only player that is out is Felipe Hernandez, and the questionable coming into this game is Cam Duke. But I swear Cam Duke actually played not only against LAFC but also in that match that they play against Dallas just in the last weekend. So it's kind of weird the fact that he is still unquestionable, even though he kind of have played in these last two games. But that being said, this is also a matchup that, I think it's kind of a very underrated matchup. I mean, there's a lot of good games that is going to happen. But a lot of people might not think this might be one of them, because this is this is a matchup that in the past it might not seem like a big kind of matchup, but it's a matchup between two teams that is in the top four of the standing, and the Colorado Rapids are wanting some revenge after what happened last time when they, of course, kind of go out on a whimper against SKC on the road and lost 3-1 in that matchup. But now, moving on, in terms of the last match of the Saturday game action, is the Portland Timbers versus RSL. Now, this is also another big game because both of these teams are actually very close to each other in the Western Conference table. For the Portland Timbers, they're currently just below the red line at 6-2-8 after they drew 1-1 against the San Jose Earthquakes at home. While for RSL, they're the last team that is going to make it to the playoffs if the playoffs started today, and their record is at 5-6-5, and they are also so fresh off of a disappointing result on the road where they lost 1-0 to the LA Galaxy away to drop their record to 5-6-5. This game will start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time will not start until 7:38 p.m. local time. For the Portland Timbers, in terms of injuries, well, we still have Yaroslav Niskoda, Ishmaeli Jom, Jeff Antonella, Andy Polo, and probably add Steve Clark onto that list in terms of the latest player that is currently injured, because, as I said, this injury report, it hasn't been updated from last week, and knowing the fact that I know that there are some players that got injured, and Steve Clark is definitely one of those, it seems like he probably is going to be out coming into this game. Now, questionable coming into this game for the Timbers are Claudio Bravo and Dario Zubric. For RSL, out for this game is still David Ochoa. I don't know why I said Danny Ochoa there. But David Ochoa and Zach Farnsworth and Andrew Brody still out for RSL coming into this game. But anytime when you have a matchup between two teams that is kind of like on the bubble in terms of the playoff race, it's always going to be a big game. And it's kind of hard to believe that, for the Timbers, as much as I predicted them to finish top of this season, which that prediction is getting worse and worse as each match week goes on, they definitely want to get a win to get themselves back above the red line. Yes, they're still dealing with injury and also have to deal with the loss of Jeremy Abovasi, who is no longer a Portland Timbers player, which is going to sound very strange to not see him in a Timbers jersey, but instead see him in the black and blue with the San Jose Earthquakes. But yeah, they're going to have to try to pick things up, and especially need to improve their home form a little bit, because these last couple of games, they have won some games so far at home, but still are dropping points and still kind of are having some issue at home, as they've been having for these last 2 years. Whereas for RSL, this team has been kind of inconsistent lately. I mean, they've been able to get wins a couple of times, but then they also have lost a couple of games. And in other words, when that happens, that means they are a very inconsistent team, and in some way kind of a very mediocre team, which I think RSL fans will take it, because this season, not a lot was expected about this RSL team. Everybody thought that this team was going to finish near the bottom of the Western Conference, and here they are in the bubble of trying to make it to the playoffs. And if they can continue this inconsistent form, or maybe improve on their inconsistent form, they could really shock MLS a little bit, and that they could actually make it to the playoffs, which is a team I did not expect that they were going to get to the playoffs heading into this season in the Western Conference. But that being said, that is pretty much it for the preview of these 7 games that's happened, or the 7 games that's going to be happening on Saturday. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all 7 of these games, and as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction for all 7 of these games. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.